Asbestos. Where are you going to find that? Well, all over the place. The most common place we all think of is those ugly old octopus furnaces that were in the big old Victorian mansions. They look like plaster casts. The bad thing about asbestos is the fiber of which it is made. It has like fish hooks on the end of the fibers, they're barbs. And when it's friable, when it's dusty and it can come off, it gets in your lungs. Your lungs do not like foreign objects. First of all, you'll cough to get rid of it. And when that's not enough, your lungs try to lubricate the area so that it can be expelled. And when that doesn't work, your lungs work on encapsulating it. Do you ever get a sliver in your finger and you can't get it out and it swells over and it actually forms callus and tissue? That's what happens. At the beginning stages, it's called asbestosis, where the calluses are starting to build up. They are highly likely to be cancerous, at which point it turns into what's called mesothelioma. And that's become an issue. I had a friend, he's gone now, but he had asbestosis. He never lived long enough to make it to mesothelioma. He moved to Arizona because the only way to prevent the callus from taking over the lungs is to exercise and keep working it heavily, and he needed to go for nice long walks outdoors in the winter, and he did it for as long as he could. He probably extended his life by 10 years. We didn't know. We totally didn't know. When my son offered his house for sale down in Clawson, he had an inspection done, and my son's pretty sharp. He didn't know he had environmental issues. There was one piece of tape around the cold air return ductwork that was kind of grayish, not duct tape, but it was more like cloth tape. And the inspector spotted that and said, that's asbestos. And so the buyer demanded that my son knock $5,000 off the price or mitigate the asbestos tape. And he had to get it done so that they tested also. It only cost him $500 to have somebody come out, cut the tape, put it in a bag wearing the proper gear, bag it all up, and test around to see that there was no asbestos left. So it really wasn't that expensive for a small, tiny amount. Where else might we see asbestos? I bought a house up in northern Michigan. 1954 Frank Lloyd Wright Houstonian, uglier than all get out. Suffered from deferred maintenance, should we say. My favorite kind of house. I don't mind making things pretty. Hadn't been painted in 30 years. This is not a bad thing. That means I don't have a lot of paint to scrape because it's down to the original stucco. And walked inside, the ugliest pink carpeting you could imagine. Probably put in about 1975. And it was worn out. And y'all know when carpeting is worn out, you can go to the corner and just grab a handful of its hair and take a peek and see what you have underneath. Polished concrete's a nice look, so I figured that might be what I'd go for on the inside. Oh, I saw checkerboard tiles, 9-inch. Black in a square of 4 and cream in a square of 4. Look to the edge where they had tacked down the staple trim, and yeah, it didn't poke a hole in the tile. Instead, it cracked it when it tapped into it. Yep, that's asbestos tile. I don't need to go get that tested. That's asbestos tile. I know that. Put the carpet down. We'll figure out what to do later. The EPA recommends if it's easy to remove, remove it. If it's difficult to remove, don't worry about it. Encapsulate it. That's what they say. So I decided to encapsulate it, and I tiled over it. So someday when it comes time to sell my house, on my seller's disclosure, are you aware of any environmental issues? Yes, there is black and cream checkerboard tile under the tile that's here that has never been tested for anything. But at least I will be telling them. I don't know for a fact that it's asbestos, but I've been around it long enough to know that, yeah, it probably is. My husband and I bought a house for renovation and resale down in Saginaw. And that's not going to happen again, by the way. He suffers from what I'd like to call might swell syndrome. While you have the window out, you might as well rewire that wall. Perfectionist, total perfectionist. It had asbestos tile on the outside. Also an I dotter and a T crosser when it comes to rules and knows about environmental and health issues. And he knew that that asbestos siding could be a bad thing, but the only way legitimately to take care of it would be either to spend a ton of money removing it or encapsulate it. And so encapsulation is what we did. We moistened it so it didn't become friable, and with the screw shooter attached the furring strips to and put the vinyl siding over the top.